Thinking about trade, wondering, can it really be the catalyst for a $100 billion new built environment economy? Pause, think about it with intentional thought, and consider where we go from here. The Bahamas, small island archipelago with big ambitions. But is trade missing the missing key to unlocking real economic power? And what will it take to position our nation as true player on the global market? Today, we dive into Real Talk with Senator Barry N. Griffin, Vice President of the Senate and Chairman of the Bahamas Trade Commission. We talk from new trade agreements to expanding market access. Is this the majority rule blueprint for economic transformation? Buckle up, because we're not just talking vision and plans like y'all always think we do, but we're talking strategy and execution in motion.
Something to think about with Dale Happy Knowles. What we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. What we imagine, we surely can achieve. Let's change the narrative, 242.
Welcome, 242 to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. And we're going to have an awesome conversation today with this grand senator in front of me. You know, he's a young fella. So, you know, that have plenty weight behind it. Because, you know, the old fellas, you know, we kind of halfway wash out, but we ain't wash out yet. You know, we're just trying to keep things afloat for everybody else. You know. But join our co-sponsors, Dom Dev Enterprises and Paget Investments, and ask your questions that you have. Hopefully we'll be able to answer them. Or just make a comment. Tell us where you're from, where you're living, where you're viewing from, all them good things, and why you feel so excited about something to think about. So welcome, Senator. How are you today?
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. First and foremost, it's a pleasure to be back on your show. I think the last time was a few years ago now, so I haven't been on in a while, but I'm doing well. Had a long day, but productive day. But I'm excited to speak to you this evening.
Awesome. Well, you know, something to think about talks about this new built environment all the time.
Yep.
You know, and when we look at that, then, you know, we say that the new built environment is the political, economic, and social environment of our society formulated through intentional thought and action, keywords, designed to create the greatest opportunity to build the highest quality of life for our citizens, residents, and those subscribing to and supporting the culture of the 242, and which will provide sustainability for generations to come.
Yep.
You know, so that's what we're talking about, and we're talking here, like we say, I say it's a Gen Y, he say millennium. You know, it doesn't matter what we call it, it's the mindset of the people in that generation that we want to tap into and get what their thoughts are and what is happening so that we can make life and raise the quality of life for us all here in the 242. That's in the Bahamas and anybody who subscribed to the 242. So, Senator, that's what we can be tapping into today.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah. Now, you know, we celebrate everything in the world. All you got to do is say party and we can be there, right? Mm-hmm. And yesterday was the 24th day of the second month of the year, February. So that's 242.
Two.
And I think we had a special day, a declaration from the Office of the Prime Minister, and also, you know, some of us have celebrated the whole week. And that's why I get on my yellow shirt, you know. With,
yeah, man, you have to have on your aquamarine full and black.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't find the one. I don't even tell you all that in the wash, but anyway, that's a different story. Cool. So, Senator, Peter F. Drucker says that the best way to predict the future is to create it. You know, and when I look at things, I say that's what you are doing, and that's what your people are doing, and what we're trying to get done, and so forth. So I'm sure you agree with that. But tell us a little bit about why you feel so proud to be a Bahamian. And I will show a couple of pictures in the background while you mention some things, and maybe that'll spur some of your thoughts.
I mean, well, first of all, I want to say I absolutely agree with this quote, and that is kind of I used to read Peter Drucker. He's a very famous author, and I read a lot of him when I was in college. He's particularly good with entrepreneurial topics. But I absolutely love this quote because this is sort of the intention of everything I do in government, in particular with the Bahamas Trade Commission. For so long, Bahamians have felt that we have been the recipients of everything around us. Things happen to us, and we just have to accept it. Larger countries make decisions, and we just have to sort of fall in line and, take our place that they've sort of given us. But as you said before, I'm a millennial and I come from a different sort of mindset. And this is the mindset that I come with, that we need to create the future that we want. The world is not the same place it was in the 1970s when we got independence. We have more access to information. We have more access to resources. The Bahamian population is more educated, more skilled. And we are closer with our friends from around the world, not just the United States, but around the world. And so now I think that we have the best opportunity, or the greatest opportunity we've ever had in the history of the Bahamas, to create our future and not just be recipients of a destiny that others have set for us. And so to answer your question, what am I most proud of to be Bahamian? I just want to start with the first thing of saying, I'm absolutely just proud to be Bahamian. We live in one of the most beautiful countries in the world by physical landscape, by geography, but we also live in one of the most beautiful countries in the world by our warmth, our culture, our people. I just had a friend from Jamaica visit the Bahamas, and he, coming from a fellow Caribbean island, he was still in awe of the beauty of the Bahamas and the warmth of the people and the culture and the food. And so for me, I'm happy to be a Bahamian because of who we are, our personalities, our big, bright personalities as Bahamians, our warmth and our hospitality, the way we treat visitors who come to our shores. Also, the fact that we are enterprising. Bahamians are hardworking, we are innovative, we're enterprising. And for a small country, we're not just doing great things here in the Bahamas, but anywhere we go, we do great things around the world. So I'm excited to be a Bahamian at this particular time in our history.
Awesome. And so, you and many other millennials around the Bahama lands is doing the great things that you talk about here. So on the screen, we have a picture of you in a certain quadrant.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about you, the person, so people will have an idea as to who they're talking about.
Well, this is a photo of me in the Senate. So for those who are tuning in who may not be aware, I'm a senator in the government of the Bahamas. I'm the vice president of the Senate. And this actually was one of the first photos I took when I became a senator. So this photo was circa sometime in 2021, one of the first sessions in the chamber, because the opening of Parliament, this would have actually happened probably after November, because I still see people having masks. So it's probably in September or October before we lifted the ban. If you look in the back, someone still has on a mask. And so, I'm a senator in the government of the Bahamas. I'm chairman of the Bahamas Trade Commission, which is the government body or agency responsible for trade policy, trade promotion, and generally just working with the government and the private sector to take advantage of our trade agreements. And so we're heavily private sector focused and policy focused. Outside of that, I'm just a regular Bahamian. I like having my stew conch on a Saturday morning. I like going to the beach, when the sun is out, but not when it's too hot. Enjoying the beauty of our islands, relaxing and enjoying the country. So just a little bit about me. I'm a lawyer by profession. And that's just a little bit about me.
Okay, and so this picture here it looks like a church.
So no, this picture is actually at the newly renovated government house. So those who haven't been to government house in a while, the sort of reception room that events were normally had This is in that reception room. So this was renovated. And again, this picture is about maybe 2 years old. This was when we had the CARICOM meetings here in the Bahamas. And so a number of these people are CARICOM officials. You can see Dickon Mitchell, who is the Prime Minister of Grenada. In that photo there. On the very left is Chris Famous, who is an MP from Bermuda. In the middle, in the purple tie, that's Walter Roban, who at the time was the deputy premier in Bermuda. And then you see Minister Miles LaRota and Shannon Dawn Cartwright. So this was in Government House when we had CARICOM officials there. And, we were greeting them and having a networking session there at Government House.
That's awesome, because I like the fact that they lighten up the place, because
yes,
I also wonder about that darkness so much.
Yep. So this actually is one of my favorite photos. This was actually in Ghana on a trade mission that we had to Africa. So about 2 years ago, when we were setting the foundation of what is now our national trade policy and our trade priorities, we did a mission to Ghana and Nigeria. And so this is in the Ahunta region in Western Ghana. And if a lot of people don't know, this is where Junkanoo actually originated. And so we went to the exact place in Ghana that has Junkanoo. And so you see it from the view of sort of sitting on stage with officials there. But what we're looking at, you would have had presentations from people from the local community. We also would have been treated to a small sort of Junkanoo procession.
Right. Okay. Awesome. And that's Chris Amashango Davis in the background, and he's been also twice.
Correct.
About the Junkanoo and the connection. Yeah.
Yes.
So you can look that link up and watch it if you want, people.
Yes, and you would also see they call her official title is now Queen Mother, but that's Angelique Swan, who is a Bahamian as well. They have great ties to Ghana, in particular that region. Long before the government sort of ventured there for trade, they were doing sort of people to people with our kinfolk in Ghana.
Right. Cool. And this here is...
So this is the former Chinese ambassador. She would have just left the Bahamas sometime late last year. So we have a new ambassador, but this was Ambassador Dai. And during her time here, we had a very good relationship. Again, in my portfolio with trade, we reach out to countries all over the world. And so China is one of the countries that has representation here in the Bahamas. And so I would have had many sort of meetings, planning sessions, discussions with Ambassador Dai about the trading relationship between China and the Bahamas. And so this was at an event hosted by the Bahamas China Friendship Association at Margaritaville, and she was present, and so were a number of Bahamians. They invited Bahamians from a number of different sectors.
Right, and so we look at that, and I think this is all the way across the pond.
This is across the pond and a few other things, but yeah, this is in Qatar. Again, this was another mission. This one was done in conjunction with the Ministry of Investments and the Ministry for Grand Bahama. So me and the Minister for Grand Bahama are seen here in this photo. We're attending meetings at a university there that had one of the best innovative labs in the Middle East, where it's an incubator for companies. And so we would have met there. The Deputy Prime Minister was in another meeting. So when you often go on these trade missions, you kind of split up to tackle all other areas. And so the DPM was in another meeting at this time.
Right. Cool. And I show these pictures because I want people to know that people are doing things, not just talking about things.
No, we're doing things. And in particular, for my position in trade, trade is sort of a people-to-people sport. This isn't something that you can zoom in on. As we learned, even in promoting our trade things, even businessmen here, when you talk to them about opportunities with international companies and manufacturers, even our companies here say, I want to go there and see their factory. I want to touch and feel the product. I want to know who's making it. And so a lot of the work we do can be done online, But when you're building these relationships with governments and building these relationships with the private sector, they want to know who they're dealing with. They want to know that you're a real person, that you're trustworthy, that when they pick up the phone or send an email, they want to know they can reach you directly. And so a lot of this you're seeing right now is just on the ground work. And so the photos here, we were in Angola, but this was in relation to a parliamentary conference. So these were parliamentarians from all over the world. The gentleman on the left is a parliamentarian from Norway, and the lady in the middle on the photo in the right is a parliamentarian from Nigeria. And so here in that photo with her, this was the first time I had met her, but I was following up on things we had done in the Nigeria mission a year before.
Cool. And I always see people on Zoom and what have you, and they have their camera off and just their initials. And I always say, I want to see people because I want to be able to read, not just what they're saying, but their mannerisms and everything. They tells you so much. So I could appreciate what you're talking about.
Correct.
Face to face.
You can do the Zoom stuff after a relationship has been built, but when you're building that relationship, they want to see you, they want to touch you, they want to feel you.
Right. Cool. All right, and I think that's you having fun there on the left, on our favorite.
I mean, it still worked for me, but part of the job is promoting what we're doing, and in particular in trade, what we're doing is not just policy oriented. It's having to get the private sector to buy in and get them involved. It's also educating consumers about what we're doing, and so a lot of what we do is we get this information, but we have to bring it to the Bahamian public, and so that was obviously at Guardian Radio, and then on the right is on another trade mission in Armenia, where we were meeting with startup companies in various sectors that have an interest in the Bahamas.
Yeah, cool. And I always say that when we look at those things that you just mentioned and who you just talked to in the last slide, my view is that the Bahamas private sector does not do what it ought to be doing, because the government is, not that we don't appreciate what the government is doing, but the government really should not be the ones driving as much of the economy as it is. And to me, it should be driven more by private sector. I don't know if you share that view with the hat you have to wear, but from an economic point of view, innovation and all that, I think if private sector invested more, we would be further ahead. But I'm glad that you all are setting this foundation that you are making the environment.
I share your view. I think the role of the government is to create an environment in which the private sector can thrive, in which entrepreneurs can enter the market, in which existing businesses can thrive, and an environment that allows businesses to grow and flourish and hire people and innovate. And so I think that's the role of the government. But I think you're right. It is the job of the private sector to drive this and tell the government where we need to go and how best to set that environment.
Right. And so the new built environment that I always talk about with the 5 pillars of sun, sand, sea, digital and people, sun, sand, and sea, not being the traditional sun, sand, sea, but renewables, safaris in the sea, and the blue economy, etc., and like bush medicines and rest out of the land, which would be the sand kind of thing. But so I'm saying that we could build $100 billion economy out of that alone, right? That's without changing anything that we're doing today. That's just an additional on top of the 12 that we have, or 13, whatever it is now. Right? So it's more like a 10x. So what role does trade play in shaping this environment that I wish to build?
So I'm a little bit biased. This is obviously my policy area and something that I'm very passionate about. But I think a lot of Bahamians don't realize that trade drives the entire economy. And I think that's because until very recently, we haven't been using the word trade to describe what is happening. However, it is exactly trade. So trade is simply the buying and selling of goods and services. And so our entire economy can be separated into the buying and selling of goods and services, imports and exports. A lot of people don't realize that, the Bahamas is a service economy. And so the biggest part of our economy is exports. People say, the Bahamas doesn't export anything because they're only thinking about physical goods, but financial services is an export. We are one of the outside of the major countries. We're one of even including them. The Bahamas is one of the biggest exporters of financial services to the world. In fact, in the United Kingdom, the Bahamas is the single largest supplier of financial services to the United Kingdom in the world. So London is a heavy financial services jurisdiction. So outside of London, Bahamian companies provide financial services to London at the highest rate. Tourism is also an export. Again, tourism services is an export. And so we don't frame these things in terms of trade, but that's trade. Outside of that, obviously, we are a heavy import country. So we import a lot of the other goods and services into the country. But again, that's trade. And so the fact that we are a heavy import country, that presents certain challenges, but it also presents certain opportunities that I think we need to sort of take into consideration. And so as far as I'm concerned, the entire economy is trade. But because financial services and tourism play such a huge role in our economy, we have separate ministries to deal with them. And to be honest, my view would be that to get this $100 billion economy, we want to grow other industries and parts of our economy so much so that they become so important that they need their own ministry that we can sort of focus on. So what role does trade play in shaping this new environment? Trade policy plays a huge role because it dictates what we import, how we import it, the rate we import them at, the price we import them at, and the quality of life and the standard of life Bahamians live as a result. So Bahamians have one of the highest qualities of living in the world, hands down. We're blessed with that. And that's because of the high quality of goods and services in our country. Not every country, not even every country in the Caribbean can boast of the high quality of goods and services that we have in this country. However, the Bahamas, and I don't shy away from a little controversy, just so you know. However, the Bahamas is also one of the most expensive countries in the world. And again, a lot of that is due to our trading relationships. Bahamians kind of intuitively know this, but they don't really know the dark numbers behind it. But we import, so 90% of our economy, we are imported goods for goods. 80% of that 90% comes from a single country. But even further than that, it comes from a single location within that country. 80% of the 90% of the things that we import in this country come from Florida. That presents certain challenges in terms of security. If something happens with a hurricane or government policy where we have no access to goods and services from Florida, the Bahamas is screwed simply because we rely so heavy on that. And in trade, they call it an over-reliance on a single source. Again, it presents challenges in terms of competition. When different companies are from different locations and different countries and jurisdictions, when they're not competing for your business, it allows for concentration in price. And so the research we're showing is we're not getting the best bang for our buck in terms of a lot of the products we get, because again, Florida imports a lot of their products and we in turn import them from Florida. And so Florida in a lot of senses tends to be the middleman for a lot of products that come into the Bahamas. And so those present challenges. But again, these are opportunities. So one of the government's sort of major initiatives now is the National Trade Diversification Program, which is kind of a two-pronged program. On the one end, we're simply promoting to the private sector to look into diversifying their trade, look into buying products from different companies, different locations, searching for the best prices around the world. If your company is buying salmon, look for jurisdictions that produce salmon instead of buying from a jurisdiction that imports salmon and then sells it to us. Little things like that. The second prong of it, we're creating the regulatory environment whereby companies can do this. So a lot of bigger companies may have the resources to simply do that themselves. But our economy is heavily run in a lot of sectors by smaller companies. And so we've started the program whereby which companies can join the program, and we use government resources to help them in finding manufacturers and producers of various products around the world. So again, all these sort of, international trips and travels that we're going on, we're meeting governments, we're building these relationships, we're meeting people from the private sector, so that when Bahamian companies come to us and say, hey, I'm looking for steel or cement or finished wood products, lumber, or I'm looking for food products, we can say, okay, we have great relationships with the Ministry of Trade in Brazil or the Ministry of Agriculture in Brazil. They've connected us with these companies. Here's the information, speak to them. Here's the direct contact with the sales agents. Let us know how the conversations go. We can help you to facilitate trade missions to go to the countries so that you can view those factories, meet those folks yourselves, and begin to order. Here's our list of international shipping companies that we've worked with and gotten preferential pricing. And so that's the sort of things that we do. So trade can possibly play a huge role in us creating this $100 billion economy, as you say.
Yeah. And so just one other thing on the Trade Commission itself then. Do you all work hand in hand with the ambassadors? Because I know Ambassador Maki and Bastian. And they were talking about a lot of stuff and bringing in new innovative solutions and stuff into the Bahamas. And so I'm just thinking that will have to touch y'all in some way. How does that work for the benefit of the people?
So the Trade Commission has a lot of partners. We work very closely with the Chamber of Commerce, for example, the Bahamas Development Bank. We work closely with the Ministry of Investments. We work with other entities in the Ministry of Economic Affairs. But one of our biggest partners is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, under which the ambassadors come. And so we utilize our missions in the various countries that we have. We utilize our mission in London to connect with Europe. And we utilize our missions in the United States to connect with companies there. We utilize our ambassadors, whether they're resident or not. We utilize our honorary councils in connecting with people on the ground, but also in terms of using them to promote what we're doing in their countries that they're appointed to. So we work very closely with Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Foreign Service officers who are stationed in the Bahamas and stationed abroad, we work very closely with them. They all have a geographic profile of countries that they work with. So, for example, when we went to Ghana and Nigeria, we connected with Foreign Affairs, who gave us kind of a dossier of all of the Bahamas' engagement in those countries before. So we're educated before we go, so that sort of institutional knowledge isn't lost. And so I would say generally the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is a big partner in everything that we do.
Awesome. So from vision to execution now, what specific trade strategies are in motion to move the Bahamas from being a small market economy to the competitive player in the global commerce?
So we have a lot going on. I'll talk firstly about sort of 3 government programs that we've recently started. The Prime Minister gave a national address in January. He announced 4 things. 3 of those things come under trade. The 4th one is the slash in the VAT for food items. And all of these things are largely centered towards the cost of living. So the view of this government is that trade is going to play a huge role in lowering the cost of living for Bahamians. So I already spoke about the first thing we're doing, which is trade diversification. We are promoting heavily for the Bahamas to diversify its trade and go directly to source markets. So we're buying goods directly from the manufacturers, directly from the producers. So our importers experience a decrease in cost, and we want that cost decrease to be passed on to consumers. The second thing that we're doing in trade is promoting competition. In any big sort of market, you see that competition is one of the drivers of innovation. Competition is a driver of growth, and competition is a driver of better prices. We believe that when businesses compete against each other, the businesses win, but also the consumers win. And so we're actually in the process right now of drafting competition legislation. most industrialized countries around the world have competition legislation. The only reason we've been able to survive this long without competition legislation is because we're not part of any of the big sort of trade organizations in the world. We're not a member of the WTO. We're not a member of the Caribbean CSME, Single Market and Economy. And so all of these, through all of those organizations, countries are required to have competition laws so that when foreign people enter your market, they know that the market is fair and they know that the market is transparent. So now we're going to be introducing competition law in the Bahamas before the end of Q2 of this year. Again, to spur innovation, to bring down prices, also to make sure that there's not anything sort of blocking market access to new entrepreneurs and new businesses. So we want to make sure that there's a level playing field for new businesses to enter virtually every market in the country. The third project we're working on is a national price comparison app. One of the things that we found here in the Bahamas is that we don't have a lot of price transparency. If you want to find the price of a lot of goods and services, you have to physically go to the store and go to multiple stores to compare the prices across things. Some companies have to call and get the prices. Prices aren't just readily available. And that's not good in a market. In a competitive market and in an open sort of fair market, price transparency is promoted. And so the app is intended that the government will take on the task of bringing all of these prices online so that you as a consumer can sit in your home and say, I'm going to the store, I want to buy salmon. You can see where the best price of salmon is for the brand you're looking for. Or you're saying, I'm going to be building a house. I want to see who has the best prices on blocks or cement or steel. And these things affect the bottom line of every Bahamian. If you can know, if you can be more informed about where the best prices are or the best brands are that you're looking for, you make better decisions as a consumer. And you not only increase your quality of life, but you also lower the cost of living. And so that's a big thing that we're doing. Outside of that, we would have launched a national trade policy about 2 years ago, and it talks about the promotion of our professional services to the world. Again, Bahamian export. So we're thinking that, financial services in terms of, banks and insurance companies, we provide services to the rest of the world. But what about our other professions? We think our accountants can provide services around the world. We think that our architects, for example, can provide services around the world, certainly to other Caribbean countries that have similar building codes like the Bahamas. And so we want to promote these services. We also are promoting the creative economy. Again, if I can sit in my house right now and watch TikTok and see creative content from people in India and China and Italy and Ghana, why can't Bahamians be empowered to do just that? You have 15-year-old Americans making $1 million a month. Why can't we have I don't know if you're on TikTok, but you see the young guys who do their little dance on TikTok. They're still in high school. They're getting millions of views from people around the world. If they were American, they would be monetizing that. These guys would have money to pay for their college tuition. And so we want to promote the creative industry and these sorts of things and promote that, to have Bahamians not just see it as a creative outlet, which it is, but also to see it as a business, as other countries see it. The other thing is we are heavily looking at supporting other government ministries in the export field. So in the Trade Commission, we can help to create the policies and suggest things that, we can export, but it's really working with in ministries like the Ministry of Agriculture and working with the private sector to come up with a strategic list of goods that we think we can either fully make here in the Bahamas or sort of be a part of the value added chain as goods move to other countries where we can sort of be a part of that. So these are the strategies and things that the government is currently not just looking at, but actively working on right now in the trade sphere.
Awesome. And I know we say we only have an hour, but from what you said so far, we might need 2 or 3. So,
Let me tell you, it's a lot. It's a lot we're doing.
Cool. So as you spoke about diversity of the trade and partners and stuff, what new markets in the Bahamas are looking at that people could be inspired? to want to get more involved in
So as I
trade
said
industry.
before, most of our business is done with the US. And so the markets we are looking at increasing our presence in and our business relationship with would be Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa. So those are the three markets we are really looking at. We think we already have a strong relationship with China. We already have a strong relationship with the United States. And so we're encouraging Bahamians to look at goods and services to import from Latin America, Caribbean, and Africa, but also to look at these markets as export markets. For example, the rest of the Caribbean is ripe to be an export market for many of our food products, agricultural products. A lot of people are doing like pepper sauces now, in particular, things like that. So we want to look at these as not just potential export and import markets, but markets that the government is actively courting. And so we're creating the environment where you can sort of smoothly go into those countries. Just over the last 3 years, our visa-free travel to countries has moved from 141 countries to 162 countries. So we're actively making it easier for Bahamians to travel to do business in Latin America, Caribbean, and Africa. And so again, we're making the people-to-people contacts, the government-to-government contacts. So again, I think the role of the government is to make that environment more favorable. So that's how we're working closely with foreign affairs to not just build these relationships, but to make sure you can actually get there easier.
Cool. And that sounds like a long time term economic stability for my new built environment.
Yep.
Right. You know, and something to think about is creative. You know, that in the creative field, and it's also digital. So that's the two. So when we're discussing trade innovation, you know, I'm a big innovator. Coming out of the telecoms industry all those years. But when we talk about that, are we rethinking what we trade or how we trade, and what role does digital platforms, supply chain, sustainability, focus industries, etc., play in this shift that the government is pushing or creating?
So we're I don't know, you must have been in some of our meetings, because your questions are, and you know, just so that the folks watching, we didn't discuss any of these questions beforehand.
Right.
So
No, I don't like to let the guests know my questions.
yeah, so you know, I'm seeing these for the first time, but we are certainly rethinking what trade is to the Bahamas and how we trade, because if you talk to anybody, this is the first time any government of the Bahamas has given so much attention to trade and made trade a centerpiece of our economic agenda. When we came into power and we looked at the records over the last administration, the Trade Commission met one time. And so that kind of gives you an idea of the role trade would have played in previous administrations. And I just told you that in the economic address that the Prime Minister made in January, there were 4 initiatives announced. 3 are trade related. And so it tells you about how seriously we're looking at trade. So we're rethinking trade just by what I said before. You know, it just always has been a given that we buy everything from the United States. But what we're saying is the world is much bigger than the US. Let's go to these countries that we have diplomatic relationships with, that we have ongoing trading agreements with, and let's see how we can benefit, because they're certainly seeing how they can benefit from the Bahamas. So we are rethinking how we trade and what we trade. Again, I already discussed a little bit about looking at our professional services, not just as products and services for domestic consumption, but why aren't our architects applying for government contracts and private sector contracts across the Caribbean? We have architects here who have helped to build Bahama and Atlantis. These other Caribbean countries don't have anything nearly the size and scale of a Bahama or Atlantis. We have Albany, we have Old Fort Bay, very prestigious sort of architectural things in the Caribbean. And so they certainly can take their experience and their talent to other parts of the world. So again, we're certainly rethinking what we trade and how we trade it and what trade is to our economy. What role? Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, and how much of this rethinking or mindset change or shift, because you talk about meeting once versus now being so aggressive and meeting a lot, is caused or influenced, let me say influenced, not caused, by the young people who are in, not just in parliament, but in government itself, and who touch government.
I think that does play a role, because I can certainly say I've been someone within the ministry that I'm involved with, sort of pushing this, and there are other young people across government who are pushing sort of progress and innovation. I'm going to mention someone now who isn't in government and not involved with the government at all, but Dr. Leo Roll, who is now the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. We have had lots of conversations on your next question: what role do digital platforms play?
Right.
He's a millennial as well. And one of the things we've been discussing is promoting for Bahamian businesses to get online. One of the questions that we're met with when we travel globally and we talk to people about doing business with Bahamian businesses, they immediately go online to look for Bahamian businesses and they can't find them. Even some of our larger, sort of more prestigious companies that we think are prestigious, we get calls from international companies saying, hey, I can't find a phone number or an email address. I don't, most of these, even large companies around the world, they have pictures of their executives, of their sales team, email addresses that you can readily reach them at. We don't have that here. And so another thing is we don't have a lot of companies that embrace e-commerce. So some companies from abroad, they say, you know what, okay, we want to do business with this company. We want to try some of their product. Think, for example, we've been promoting Bahamian rums in London, in the UK, and in Europe. So some companies are, who want to try them, say, okay, let me go to their website, order a couple bottles, get it delivered over here to Europe for us so we can have like a tasting, You go to the website, there's no e-commerce to order the product that they can just have it delivered. These are things that the world has adopted 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So I'm not exactly sure you can call it innovative, but this is something where we're lacking here in the Bahamas. And so the Bahamas Trade Commission, the Chamber of Commerce, we're currently now working on a program simply to promote businesses to get online and embrace digital platforms, whether you're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, have a website, whatever it is. You just need somewhere that your brand is prominent, that international businesses can see your products, they can see your prices, they can buy your goods and services. So that's something that we're going to be working closely with the Chamber of Commerce to do, because that's hugely important in this new world. And I find it so interesting because Bahamians are used to going on Amazon and buying products, or going on Walmart's site to see the deals, or when Black Friday comes, we all online on all these different sites buying furniture, buying electronics. But when it comes to the Bahamas, we're very comfortable not knowing what Kelly's has in stock, or QVC, or any of these stores, and feeling very comfortable having to get into our car, drive 15 to 30 minutes to physically walk around to see something that almost everywhere else in the world is online and you can look at from the comfort of your home. So we're trying to advance in that.
20, more like half an hour to an hour.
Well, listen, how about you? I live all the way out west, so it's a drive to me to get almost anywhere. So I feel your pain. But yeah, so these are some of the role that digital platforms play. It plays a huge role. Supply chain, sustainability, everything you're asking about, they play huge roles in the global economy. And I think now, this government is kind of alerting the Bahamian private sector and consumers that even though these may not have been openly discussed in the past, these have always played a role in the Bahamian economy. But now we're at a place where things kind of need to change. The old system that worked for a long time isn't working anymore. Eggs are $11, $15 a pop, so things need to change.
Well, digital is pretty much a baby of mine. So from a telecom's point of view, when I came back from school in '86 and thereabouts, that was right at the first when we started to move that, and that was dropped in my lap. Being one who studied digital, and not too many others might have done so, maybe by default that's what happened there. But like you said, we just dropped the ball and stopped innovating along the way as we went. So
exactly.
A couple of questions here. Let's see here. So we say, Cory Burrows said that modernization, not tomorrow, but today. And then
Correct. I agree.
we are capable, most definitely. Not a young person, folks who got good head on the shoulders, trying to build the Bahamas from strength to strength. And
Yeah,
so
I
when we,
agree.
when,
We,
yeah,
we, we are capable. And any Bahamian who's traveled the world, studied abroad, or even worked abroad a little bit, we realize that any organization we go in, we are head to head with the best. I mean, watching Aisha Bow, the first Bahamian woman to potentially go into space. I mean, we have rocket scientists that we've produced, you know what I mean? So we definitely are capable. And I agree, modernization now, not tomorrow. We don't want to fall
right.
behind.
Yeah, but and I was just about to say that from a digital point of view, the platforms are there across the country. We are more connected digitally than I would say United States and Canada, who will be ahead of us in this world zone
Yep.
per square
We have
mile.
one of the, I don't know
But
if you
we
know, but
just
we have
don't have
one
the
of the
platforms, the applications to run on them. That's
So
what
I
we
don't know
need
if
to
you know this,
develop.
but we have one of the deepest penetrations of mobile phone use in the world. A
Yeah,
study was done a couple of years ago, and they said about 88% of the Bahamian population has a cell phone with the internet. That's
right.
not common around the world, even in a lot of industrialized countries. And so businesses don't take advantage of that. There are ways in WhatsApp that you can run your entire business from WhatsApp. Inside
Right.
WhatsApp, you now
Yep.
have a back end that has e-commerce platforms and things where you can buy products and services. So a lot of Bahamian businesses don't even realize that this WhatsApp that we use to spread gossip and catch up with our families, you can use that to make some money. 88%
Consumer
of
wisdom.
Bahamians have a cell phone.
Right. And the big ticker on that is this: there's a 10x or even a 100x scenario in terms of investing in brick and mortar compared to investing in digital. So
Correct.
when you invest in digital, it costs you way less to do digital. And the other part of it is that you get your returns way faster
Hmm.
than what you get in brick and mortar, because brick and mortar takes long and all kind of things have to go in place. And
Yep.
digital is almost like crypto fairy kind of thing, but it could be anywhere and quick. Cool. All right. So I see we're running out of time, so we need to move on. So, Senator, unless you can give me a couple more minutes of your time. But how does the Bahamas trade policy support sustainability and our industries like the blue economy, renewable energies, digital tech, etc., merging to reshape what we export and drive long-term growth?
Yep. So I should have sent you a copy of the national trade policy, but for everyone who's watching, the national trade policy is on the website of the Ministry of Economic Affairs, and I can certainly send it to you. So if any of your viewers contact you, you'd be able
Right.
to send it to them. But a heavy focus is on what we call the colored economies. So we spoke already a little bit about the orange economy, which is the creative economy. This question is asking about the blue economy, which is taking advantage of our marine resources. And there's also the green economy, which deals heavily with environmental sustainability and agriculture. And so all of these are addressed in our national trade policy. And, as a Bahamian, you would know our blue economy is our bread and butter. So
Yep.
the key for that economy is sustainability, and likewise with agriculture. And so again, these are things we never really focused on in the past because tourism and financial services were our bread and butter. But now we are looking at these industries to help to reshape the Bahamian economy as we become a little bit more focused on creating more exports. So as I said before, people don't view it like this, but tourism and financial services are Bahamian services exports. But we want to use, in a sustainable way, our maritime and marine resources and our agriculture and environment to also spur economic growth. And, we already spoke about the digital and tech environment and how
Right.
that's key to a competitive private sector.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're doing all of that because, you know, for a long time, a lot of people who were in the technical space was wondering when we're gonna start using these networks that we would have built.
Yep.
Because that's only one tier. Like that's like building a house, right? You get the foundation, and then you get so, you know. I mean, we know we have some challenges with maintaining things, but that's a different story. So cool. So yeah, Corey, yeah, you know, it's part of the education that has to happen.
Yep.
The more we talk, the better, right? And that's one of the reasons why we have the show, to try to expose people to new opportunities.
Yep.
That if they stretch their mind, what they could do. And you know, with our little $10, we could do plenty more in these spaces than what we could have done in the brick and mortar spaces.
Agreed.
Cool. So let's see. Boom. All right. So regional trade is often talked about, but not always leveraged effectively. That's an old school saying. From what you were saying today, it seemed like that has been flipped over, changed, washed out.
Yeah. The old sort of economic model does not work anymore. And so before we find ourselves sort of lagging behind, we need to sort of reshape how we take advantage of our relationships. So we've always seen our CARICOM brothers and sisters, CARICOM countries, as kinfolk. They're our brothers and sisters. We share a culture, but we never really thought of them as part of our economic model. How can we trade more with each other to make us all more wealthy, keep the money in the family, so to speak? How can we sell goods and services to them? How can we buy more goods and services from them? So a lot of things that we're buying from the US or other places, they're readily available in the Caribbean as well. So for example, in the last 2 years, we've had a trade mission from Jamaica of Jamaican businesses looking to do more business in the Bahamas. The Bahamas Trade Commission hosted them. And we also had a trade mission to Jamaica where we looked at opportunities for Bahamian businesses in Jamaica. We had a trade mission from Trinidad and Tobago come here, and they're planning another one to come back here to the Bahamas. We're currently also working with a Bahamian shipping company to create a trade route from the Bahamas to Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and Grenada, and then on the way back. And so we want goods to go through those countries, starting from the Bahamas. Our exports go throughout those countries, and then their exports coming back on that same loop. So we are trying to, and again, this is building it from the ground up. We're not in CSME, the Caribbean Single Market Economy. So a lot of these other Caribbean countries already trade more with each other. So it's trying to make the Bahamas be a more integral part of that market without us being in the CSME.
Right. Cool. All right. So we already touched on a lot of this in this question here, but from the second part, it says bulk purchasing from foreign warehousing or even local warehousing, or other strategies being used to cut costs and boosting them. I remember my brother telling me about an initiative that was supposed to happen in Grand Bahama, where with their port, products would come in, go into the warehouse in there, and then break it down and go ship it out separately. But the Bahamians was having a challenge because when it came in, we had to do the conversion in currency, and then for it to go back out, they had to do the conversion. So really and truly, people who they would have been competing with didn't have that double conversion that would have to be done. So, but the bottom line is, are we also in this revisiting of things, considering stuff like that?
So this is the exact plan the government has for the National Trade Diversification Program. So as I said before, we've already spoken to a lot of the manufacturers and producers in Latin American countries, Caribbean countries, and African countries. And so the idea is to have Bahamians buy in bulk from these countries. And so we've worked it in an interesting way. We family here as Bahamians here, so we can talk a bit openly. There's a stigma that Bahamians sometimes don't necessarily want to work closely with each other. For competition reasons, you don't want the store down the street knowing what you're doing and buying, etc. So it's very understandable. And so in the program that we've designed, it's bulk ordering without having to work closely or communicate with any of the other persons in the program. And so, for example, let's just use a poultry farm in Brazil, for example, or a cattle farm in Brazil. We've worked it out so that if there are 10 Bahamian businesses ordering, they all speak directly to the business. They all speak directly to the farm. They put in their orders separately. They spend their money separately. Nobody knows what the other is doing. However, from the farm's point of view, they will consider all orders from the Bahamas to be bulk orders. And so Bahamian companies A to Z will be able to get preferential bulk pricing because they put all the orders together. And also shipping will happen together as much as possible. So if all of us order within or let's just say eight a K orders within a particular time period, their goods will be shipped on the same, container to the Bahamas, and repeat. So we've kind of, again, rethought the bulk ordering model and made it something unique to our culture so that we can experience that. Because again, a lot of times small stores can get the cost advantages because they simply don't order in those quantities where, they may want to order 1,000 units of something. You have countries ordering 100,000 units of the same thing. And so, we're trying to bulk order as much as possible so that those cost savings are then passed on to the Bahamian consumer.
Cool. Well, my next two questions, I think you would have tapped them, and I'll just put them on the screen for you to see in case you think this slightly different, but
so again, yeah, you must have been in some of our meetings. We didn't talk about this, but part of the national sort of trade plan that we have is to improve our port, but in particular Porter's Key Dock. So I'll just say this very quickly. A lot of Bahamians see Porter's Key Dock as the place that we go to get conch salad and have fun. I know I certainly have great memories from my childhood going to Porter's Key, getting conch salad. But a lot of people don't realize that Porter's Key is key for internal trade in the Bahamas. So Porter's Key Dock is the hub for internal trade, goods coming into the country and going out to the family islands. And so there are a lot of inefficiencies at Porter's Key Dock that make sending goods to the family islands expensive. Hence why a box of cereal in some of the family islands is $15, whereas in the US is $3, in Nassau is $7, and in the family islands is $15. And so we're working very closely with the Minister for Transport, whose portfolio the docks come under, to modernize Porter's Key. And you would have seen a few things happen already if you follow the news. We've given now electricity to the vendors, again, so that they can, prepare things more freshly. They're upgrading the security at Porter's Key Dock. You'll see better lighting put into Porter's Key Dock. And we've also begun the process of removing a lot of vessels from the water. So there are a lot of sunken vessels in the waters around Porter's Key that hinder boats from coming in and out. So they're taking up space and it's making it more expensive for other boats to dock there. So we've begun that process. But there's a lot more to do in regard to that. But that just to answer your question a little bit.
Yeah. So Senator, from an engineering point of view, there's too much activity at Porter's Key, right? And also because of those activities, they overlap in the traffic. So you have light traffic, pedestrian traffic, heavy traffic, and those are activities that really shouldn't happen in the same space. From a pure engineering point of view, I understand why they're there and how things work. So my thing would be is put on your diary or something like that. At some point we need to consider some of those heavier machineries moving from Porter's Key to maybe an Awaki, and then also the major shipping. That is Awaki moving to another location. I know people can say, "Oh, we just spent all this money," but listen, we have the plan for long term too, not just for the short term. Because soon, with the growth, these things can buck up with one another, and then everybody can be talking about who pushing who out the way, and this because they need to expand, and there's not going to be space to expand.
Yep.
Right? Cool. So Corey also says that all of this sounds good. How is the model leveraging Bahamian products going back into the trade route? and we operating on a pure consumer perspective.
So I don't know when Corey came in, but we talked a lot at the beginning about exports, increasing Bahamian exports. So it's definitely not seeing us as strictly consumers, but we do want to work on the trade imbalance. We do want to see more Bahamian exports. So exports of Bahamian creative services, export of Bahamian professional services, but also export in physical products. So again, I said, figuring out ways we can be part of the value added chain of goods going to the United States, for example, but also looking at specific exports that the Bahamas can do. So for example, considering whether we can have a pineapple industry once again, or considering things that we grow very great here, such as tomatoes, seeing if we can, grow tomatoes on a larger scale and provide to the United States or other Caribbean counterparts, for example. So there are things that grow very well here in the Bahamas. Also lots of leafy greens, investing in those things, also looking at hydroponics. So it's not just from a consumer perspective, but as I stated before, it's working closely with ministries such as the Ministry of Agriculture to look at what we can sort of invest in that has export potential.
If they want a beta location, they could come talk to me.
Yeah, you got some good land.
I have some land. I don't know about good land, but if they could build products on this land, then we in good shape as a country. And so that's why I said they want beta. All right, so infrastructure, boom, boom, and let's go to the next question. Boom. So execution often comes with resistance. We talked about that already, with some of our cultural thing, where we don't like to talk to one another. And I think that's one of the reasons why we don't have real products for cruise ships. But that's a different show. We could talk about that later. Because they deal with packages, and we don't like to join up with one another to do things. But what policy shifts or mindset changes need to happen both in government and private sector to fully capitalize on this driven economy?
So this is my view. We're talking very sort of calmly and intellectually about this because of the platform that we're on. But this is some real radical stuff that we're doing. This is shifting the foundation of the Bahamian economy, because the foundation that we've created, it has served us extremely well for the last, 50 years since independence, and even probably about 30 years before independence when we really started getting into tourism and financial services.
However, Senator, not to be rude and cut you off or anything, but I think based on some of the questions that Corey asked, maybe, and some of the things that I've been asked offline before I came on the show, was I think Bahamians really feel that governments across the board have not really looked out for Bahamians. And so we talk about trade, and so these trades could be for foreign people that do and prosper, but Bahamians don't see the connection. And that's why I always encourage people like yourself to come on and talk about making that connection so Bahamians would know.
So I agree with you, but if we talk in real, it also goes to something you and I spoke about before the show started. This is for the private sector to take advantage of. The government can only create the environment for you to survive. The government can't force you to get into business. And this isn't, a communist country or a country with a centralized government where the government will be investing in these businesses and running the businesses themselves. If we create the environment and build a relationship so that you can bring products from Ghana and Nigeria and Brazil and Panama, it will have to be up to the Bahamian people to take advantage of that. The trade routes exist. We're doing the visa-free travel for you to travel there. The trade agreements are there. We've brought the international partners to the table. It has to be the Bahamian people who say, I see what the government is trying to do, and I want to take advantage of that. It's the old saying, you could bring a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink. And so I think it's going to be young people like Corey, millennials like myself, but also Gen Zers who have to say, I see what this is. The economic shift has changed. I need to be the one to bring this to the Bahamas or take advantage of this. Someone has to be the first person to say, hey, I'm going to bring meat directly from Brazil, open up that butcher shop and show them we don't have to buy it from a particular other country, we can get it direct. Someone has to be the one to bring tuna directly from Ecuador. Someone has to be the one to begin to import shoes and clothes and textiles from Africa and open up a store. The government can't do that. That's not the business that the government is in. You set the policy environment, you set the framework, but it's the people, the Bahamian people, the entrepreneur, the small business who has to see that opportunity and run with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that message needs to go far and wide. And hopefully my people will be able to clip that out and send that as a short reels or something. Because that's strong. I think Bahamians need to know that, these opportunities are there. And I'm sure with...
And the thing is, when we create the opportunity and then when a foreigner comes and take advantage of it, there's uproar. But there's nothing stopping the Bahamian from taking advantage of it as well.
Right. Well, hopefully we got all this. Let me ask this one more question from Corey just says amen. He's preaching now. So,
preaching.
Yeah.
Cool. We take him to church tonight.
Yeah. Well, Senator, I'm mindful of your time, and so I have this last question for you. If we fast forward 10 years, what does a trade optimized $100 billion economy look like? And would be the signs that we got it right?
The signs that we got it right, the first one that instantly comes into my head, it's two-pronged. Every single person living in our borders would be gainfully employed. The Bahamas is a small country, less than 500,000 Bahamian citizens, probably another 100, 200,000 undocumented persons within our borders. Every single one of those persons in our borders could be gainfully employed. We have the geography. We have the foundation of the economy. We just need to set this innovation economy for the 21st century. Everyone can be employed. The second part of that is that Bahamians will be owners of this economy. We won't just be the workers toiling the fields for international companies, but if we take advantage of trade, we'll be the ones building these new relationships. It would be you and me and Corey and 10,000 other Bahamians who builds the direct relationships with manufacturers and providers in Brazil, Panama, Peru, Ghana, Nigeria, Trinidad, Jamaica. And so we're the new businessmen of the new Bahamian economy, and Bahamians would be the owners of this economy. So that would be the sign that we absolutely got it right. And so if we fast forward to 10 years, I think that's what a trade optimized $100 billion Bahamian economy would look like. Bahamians are the owners of this economy, and there's no poverty within our borders. Everyone is gainfully employed at a high standard of living.
Senator, I said that's the last question, but I ask you just one more. The $100 billion. A lot of people look at me and say I'm mad or whatever, that we could get a $100 billion economy. From what you said today, I want to change this number to something bigger. But do you, from what you see and know, do you see that as being a 5-year, 10-year, or 15-year type possibility?
First of all, I would say we have to get it right. It has to be a strategic focus. We have a plan. And just like Asian countries, we execute the plan year after year. We don't deviate. Everything connects the dots to get the plan right. I think we could achieve that in 10 to 15 years. Think about it like this. We have a $12 billion economy, largely on about 10 million tourists coming to our shores. For the first time over the last year or two, we've gone up to like 12 million tourists coming to our shores. But previously, it's always been around like 9 million, but we've been doing a lot better right now. Think of and I'm just using tourism as one example. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The United Kingdom sees 75 million tourists a year. We only see 12 million tourists a year. Think of the Bahamian Islands that could accommodate more tourists. Tourism, for example. think of what our economy would be just if we diversified tourism to bring in 75 million people a year. Now, think of an optimized trade economy where it's not just tourism as a service, but it's financial services. It's exporting our accountants, exporting our architects, exporting our singers and creative folk, and also exporting products. There's a tomato farm on this island. There's a pineapple farm on this island. We're farming shrimp. We're farming conch. All of these for export in a safe and sort of resilient kind of way. But imagine our economy diversified in that way. You can't tell me every single Bahamian who wants to be employed would not be able to find a good paying job in this economy. And Bahamians who want to own something would not find an opportunity that they like to own a part of our economy. So it's definitely possible.
Awesome stuff. I love that because, I don't like to throw things over too far ahead of people. I like to stretch people's mind, but I'm glad when we're doing things that making things happen, right? So I'm asking you a lot of questions. Is there anything that you would like to say to the audience that we might not have covered or might have crossed over?
Well, I mean, I think we touched a lot, but I just wanted to bring across the central point that these things we're talking about, they are transformative, they're transformational, and it's a real shift from what we've been doing in the past. And it's going to take the Bahamian people buying into this idea that we, as Corey said, that we are capable, that we can do this, that we can be the masters of our destiny. And I think once we kind of recognize that and feel that and believe that, we could march straight forward into this sort of new innovation economy. And we could be, truly be the greatest little country in the world.
Awesome. Well, Senator, I would like to thank you for taking the time to come out and share all these nuggets and opportunities that we have with the people, the Bahamas and the 242, wherever they are in the world, whether it's Ghana or Canada or, the UK. We got people listening from all over the place.
Yep.
And watching. We would love for persons of your portfolio to come back and share maybe on a more granular level, and we just pick one of the pillars and dive into a little bit more. I
would love to arrange that. I think you would have a great conversation talking with some of the Bahamian shipping companies that we're working with who are going to help us bring products in from other countries. I think that'd be great. So you can talk to Bahamian entrepreneurs who are on the ground. We're building the relationships, but they're doing the logistics of making sure these products get. I think I'm going to introduce you to some of those companies. It'd be great for you to have them on.
Yeah, we have to build this confidence that we could do something different than what we've been doing. Because Einstein said, if you keep doing the same thing over and over,
that's insanity.
Expect different results.
Yep.
Right. Awesome. But let me let you go because I know you have plenty of things on your slate that you mentioned before.
Yes. So thank you again. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure. I love these conversations. And please share the link with me after this. I would love to get some of this information out.
Sure, will do.
Okay.
Stay blessed and keep up the hard work.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining.
You're welcome. So you've been watching Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles, and this evening, like I mentioned, I promised you that we're going to have a very enlightening conversation, and hopefully that we were able to do that. And if you found any value in this discussion, please hit the like button, share, and do subscribe, because the more we do those things, the more the message reaches more people, and the more we get across to the Bahamian people what can happen, the better the opportunities would be for us to be able to make things happen. And then our quality of life would be better because we will have less people being idle. And we all know what happens when people are idle. That's well documented. I don't call that man name because I don't like to acknowledge him. But so until next time, next week, when we come back with some more information to stretch our minds, provide opportunities. And folks, do remember that this was a millennial on the show today. And other people are millennials doing great things. So get involved. Till next time.
Enjoyed the show? Then subscribe to us for more educational and inspirational content. Ring the bell so you never miss a show. Let's change the narrative, 242.